I'm going to attempt to survive the next 100 days in Elden for the only goal to find and defeat General Radon. And if I die at any point, I'll just have to try again. But before that, we're almost at 500 subscribers, so if you could even consider subscribing, it means a ton. To celebrate my victory, I stood in the highest point of the tallest mountain and got attacked by these stupid bats. And I also tried to pick a fight with a turtle. Continuing my journey, I came across the front gate ruins and I made it my mission to kill every single one of these pesky soldiers. And I made it my mission to run away as far as I could. And behold, I found the site of grace, in which I was greeted by a random lady who handed me a donkey. What in the holy mother of Eddie Murphy is this? After a long rest, I finally entered the storm gate, and oh my god, what in the holy Bible is this freak? At this point, my balls were sweaty, knees weak, arms so heavy, there was piss on my pants already, Margaret's confetti, I'm nervous, but on the surface I'm screaming already. With the help of donkey, I was able to escape, but not for too long, because I got jumped by the wolves. On day 4, I found another lady in red who gave me spirit summoning. What's with these ladies and handing me stuff? Do I look that miserable? Well, I guess. I continued my run until I reached the Storm Hill gate and I got jumped by 4 pesky soldiers again. On day 5, after a long trail of death, to my surprise, I walked right into the enemy territory and behold, the great Margaret the Fell. But the alpha giga chat that I was, I stood my ground and faced Margaret while my crown jewels were drenched in sweat. As Margaret was making his first move, at that moment, I thought of the only thing I could do to win this fight. I rolled and rolled and rolled off the cliff. But you know what? Second time is a charm. Maybe if I give it another try. At this point, I could not take more of Margaret's punishments. My mental endurance was at its limit. So I gave up screaming and started running for my life as far as I could to escape this hellhole. Everywhere I went was a punishment until I reached the site of grace. And by the grace of Eddie Murphy, the donkey lady came to me and offered me something that I could not refuse. The permission to see Lady Fia. And let's just say, it has been a long day. As soon as I saw Lady Fia, my legs turned into jelly. I fall into her arms, crying while she consoled me like a baby. And after a long day of rest in the arms of our gal Fia, I was ready to face the world again. And I got jumped by the wolves. Twice actually. And oh, it's day 9 by the way. I was running for my life as usual until I came across this giant golem laying on the ground. I thought to myself, this is cool, until it got up and started chasing me. So in this intense chase sequence, I came across this gate and I went inside knowing that the golem wouldn't be able to fit in. But I couldn't even imagine what was waiting for me inside. This was actually a dungeon, and these dungeons are ran by stone goblins. And let me just tell you something. You don't want to mess with stone goblins, and you definitely don't want to cross path with stone goblins. But most importantly, you don't want to fight with stone goblins because they are lizards with knife but on crack. So you can imagine the type of damage they can do on a person mentally. I somehow opened the gate and went inside. At this point, I knew there was something waiting for me behind that door, but I wasn't ready. Behold, the Adri Burial Watchdog. Okay, I don't know how to describe this one. I mean, first of all, why is this dog looking thing so fast? I tried to fight it, trust me, but the best I could do was die. So I gave up quickly and I got out of the dungeon in anger. At this point, I hadn't seen light in days. My disappointment led me to pick a fight with anything that could move. This included a bunch of crackheads, monkeys, horse riders, monkeys fighting pesky soldiers, and the bloodhound night crawler. Did I tell you I lost all of it? At this point, I was so pathetic that even the rolling goats were dodging my attacks left and right. But my search for strength and finding General Radon still continued, and I came across the Santa merchant on the 14th day of my journey in the Church of Ella. The merchant offered, but I had no money to buy anything, so I climbed another highest peak of the tallest mountain to contemplate on what did I do wrong. Soon I realized that I didn't know how to level up my stats or weapons. So I did a bit of research and found out that more runes equals more power. I was excited and I literally typed in how to get more runes, and I was dumbfounded when I realized that every enemy drops a certain amount of runes. But how come I didn't have any runes up until this point? Then I found out that every time I died, I dropped all my runes, and I had to collect them back if I wanted to level up. Now I feel like I was one step closer to my goal. I also went on a hunt for monkeys because they were the easiest one to kill. Now it was time to find a site of grace to level up, and on my way to the Church of Makira, I came across that big freak again, and apparently they're called trolls. Here I thought they would be called something much cooler, like I don't know, sword giants or something? Anyways, riding through the Midwood forest, I came across a few bears. One of them started chasing me, and I panicked to get away, but my stupid donkey disappeared. Now I was all by myself, and as I turned around, I saw the mama bear. My heart sank into the ground. I thought I would be done for, but the mama bear was too busy scratching the tree, and somehow I made it out of the forest alive. On day 17, I finally came across the two trolls dragging the wagon. It was a sight to behold, but it makes you wonder who would do such a thing. I mean, even I didn't have the courage to face the trolls, and to think that there was someone even bigger and stronger roaming these lands terrified me. At this point, I was strong enough to finally visit all the previous sites to assert my dominance on every single thing that moved. So I took my revenge on the wolves, and I hunted a few bears until the mama bear showed up, and you know, and I also got slayed by the troll. On day 20, I finally found the tutorial section of the game, and I felt stupid going through it. I mean, where was it when I needed it? And the soldier of Gothic was embarrassingly weak. I feel bad fighting him. He only landed 2 shots, and that's because I was too eager to kill him instead of blocking his attacks. Not gonna lie though, this battle tickled my ego enough to challenge the 3 sentinel, and he just one-shotted me into non-existence. Going back to the Church of LA, I had a surprise visit from the lady, Ronnie the witch. She told me that she was the previous owner of the donkey and that I should take care of the donkey, and just now I realized the donkey is called Torrent. Wait, what? My search for power led me to one of the dungeons, and I saw the coolest boss ever. Behold, the Black Knife Assassin. Too bad though, cause I whooped his ass without breaking a sweat. Before crossing the Saints Bridge, I found Alexander the Jar, who was stuck in the ground and wanted my help. I was hesitant to help him because what if he attacks me? But thankfully he was nice, and he also gave me a piece of meat. Though I cannot say the same for the Mad Pumpkinhead. He was viciously violent, and I had to put him in check. In order to assert my dominance, I continued my journey to the land of the living dead. Riding on the highs of the past victories, I was too blinded and I got jumped by the skeleton. So after taking care of them, I leveled up my stats, and I finally met the daddy skeleton, who was riding his boat in the summoning water village. Okay, so here's the deal. At this moment, I had conflicting thoughts because I wasn't strong enough to end the battle quickly, but I wasn't that weak to just give up. So this was my longest battle yet, because the daddy skeleton would summon his children, and when the odds were against him, he would just disappear. He wasn't anything to write home about, but he was playing dirty with his tricks. At this point, I was so pissed that I turned off my screen recording just to focus on the battle, and yes, I was finally able to beat him off screen. Okay, so after this battle, everything changed when I crossed the border to the land of Caled. I was literally walking on clouds with the amount of ego I pumped into my head, and I thought I could just walk in the land without any consequences, and oh boy, I was wrong. This land was a living hell, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The first creature I encountered killed me on the spot, but it wasn't until I crossed the firewall I saw things that would haunt me for days. There were walking deads in groups trying to cross the bridge to the other side. There were crows the size of mountains, I mean literally, and these giant dogs acting like T-Rex. I had no chance of survival, so the first opportunity I got, I traveled back to the Lime Grave and contemplated on my journey to the living hell. I realized that this world was much more terrifying than I anticipated, and I knew I had to get stronger if I wanted to survive this world. So I started training intensively for a few days, or more like collecting runes, and the best way to collect runes was to invade the Cadence camp. They were prideful warriors with a very aggressive fighting style, too quick on their feet I must say, and if I didn't block on time, they would just send me flying. These Cadence were much more skilled compared to those other clumsy soldiers, so I had to revisit the camp many times to gather enough runes to level up. Once I gathered enough runes, I increased my stats to focus on power and health while ignoring everything else, and this came back to haunt me later on, but for now, I was finally strong enough to stand my ground. On day 27 of my survival journey, I was ready to face the troll, and I defeated him fair and square. And to celebrate my victory, I tracked down the 2 other trolls dragging the wagon, and I nailed them to the ground. Like literally. To say my ego was bursting out of my skull was an understatement. So the first thing I wanted to do was to track down the tree sentinel and show him who's the Giga Chad. But goddamn, this guy was brutal. He was so heavy yet so fast, and his hit and run technique was very precise. So it took me a couple of tries to learn his movements and sync my attacks accordingly. But once I pushed him between the rocks and the fallen castle, it restricted his movements severely, and I took the chance to finally defeat him. He was a formidable opponent, and now I thought I could do the same to the dragon in the swamps of Limegrave, and it didn't go according to the plan. But there was one more enemy that I wanted to get my hands on ever since we first met, the man who pushed me to insanity, and now it was my turn to pay it back. This time I had my spirits and the co-operator to help me defeat him. Margaret had such a unique character design, he was oozing with style. As far as fighting technique, he was a close range attacker using his cane, golden sword and hammer, and he also had some decent long range attacks. He was very precise with his movements and went to attack for maximum damage, but he had a lot of openings once he was occupied. I feel like the tree sentinel was better at defense because of its constant movement and hit and run technique. It is just my opinion, but I think the sentinel was a technical fighter while Margaret is an emotional fighter. The fight with Margaret was really interesting, but I kind of feel like we overpowered him and he didn't know how to handle all 4 of us at once, and I think I could have defeated him by myself without the help of others. Overall, I was kind of disappointed with the battle. I think I overtrained for this fight and it didn't feel like a struggle. On day 34, I finally crossed the Bridge of Sacrifices, and I was greeted by the spelling magic enemy. I had never seen them before, so after dealing with them, I tried to make my way to the castle. And there, I saw a giant arrow coming towards me. I was stunned, so I quickly ran to the castle, but suddenly I saw a giant arrow man standing and waiting for me. I tried to be sneaky, but he saw me, so I had to face him. But he got dropped quickly with only 2 hits. Back in the castle, I made my way to the top, and there I saw the most horrifying thing ever. A group of misbegottens was celebrating their victory over the dead pile of burning soldiers. Safe to say, I slaughtered every single one of them for their evil massacre. And then I ascended even further, so you can imagine how tall this castle was. I went so high just to climb back down to the beach. There I met some jellyfish, and by this point I knew I was facing an enemy. It was the most disappointing battle ever, and the enemy was very average in design, movement and fighting style. This was the easiest thing ever, and I didn't even break a sweat defeating the boss. Now I was traveling to the Church of Pilgrimage, and there I came across the most insane creature ever. Behold, the walking mausoleum, or as I call it, the ringing castle. I didn't know what to expect, whether this is a foe or an enemy. As I went up close, I saw these white stones attached to its feet, so I started breaking them, and suddenly the castle started to collapse. But I was able to get out quickly before it falls apart. And as I turned around, to my surprise, the castle just landed on the ground, but there was nothing in it except for a dead body. So I left the castle in disappointment and made my way to the minor Idri Weeping Peninsula. Jeez, that was a mouthful. There I saw another boss. Behold, the minor Idri. This was a very weird creature holding a Japanese instrument called samisen, and I couldn't tell the front from its back. He was very slow and clumsy, but soon I ended his music career for good. On day 46 of my survival journey, I finally conquered most of the south part of the Elden Ring map. This included Limegrave and the Weeping Peninsula. Now it was time to go up north towards the Leonia of the Lakes, but I had one stop in the Church of Irid to level up with all the runes I collected. By this point, I had realized that ignoring my endurance and stamina was a stupid idea, so I made sure that I increased my stamina enough to keep up with my strength. And as I reached the cliff of the Leonia of the Lakes, I stood there to admire the landscape. It was truly beautiful. While exploring the north, I came across a few enemy types, but nothing out of the order, so I invaded the Purified Ruins camp, and I also tried to pick a fight with a giant lobster and a giant crab, and I failed miserably in both instances. Making my way to the Gate Town's bridge, I was was suddenly attacked by the mama bear, and oh boy, let's just say it was that time of the month again. Because she was barbarously brutal, I noticed that she was very quick for his size. But once I got under her, she was useless, as she couldn't attack me until she moved. But I put her out of her misery quickly. And I also found another daddy skeleton sailing its ship, and I put him out of his misery too. While crossing over the canyon, I came across the coolest enemies ever, the fire monks. I thought I was in for a show tonight, son, but after killing the daddy monk, I realized how far I have come in regards to my strength, because they stood no chance against me. Further in the distance, I saw a vehicle patrolling the land. Soon, I found out that it was a fire chariot. This has to be the most unique thing I have seen in Elden, and to my surprise, it wasn't actually a living being, but rather it was operated by a pilot sitting in the back. So after dealing with this one, as I turned around, I saw another giant golem holding an axe. I already knew who my next target was in this conquest of asserting my dominance. But this golem was different from before, because even though it had a lot of openings because of its size, it still knew how to keep me away from its legs. But you know what? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. I went inside the castle to descend into the underground for the first time. It was the deepest I have ever been, and let's just say I wasn't too keen to explore after seeing these giant ants. I made my way through the tunnels and onto the bridge just to descend even further in the underground. There I was greeted by the Clayman and this horrifying creature called Malformed Star. Honestly, I was waiting for it to come down any minute, but it just hung in there and started throwing rocks at me. Soon my disappointment was immeasurable, so I did what any smart individual would do. I started shooting arrows at it, and the worst part, I didn't even get a drop, so I wasted about 2 hours for nothing. But soon my patience was rewarded when I came face to face with the dragon soldier of Nocastella. The creature design was captivating, a mummified human body with a dragon head. But I didn't get why he was dragging his body instead of just standing. This was by far the biggest enemy I had faced, but he was very slow in speed and movement because of its size. Even dragging his arms was nothing to write home about. He also had the same weak point as the mama bear. As long as I was under him, he could not attack me until he moved backwards. So for the first half of the battle, the odds were on my favor, until it started charging electricity out of its body and pulled out wings out of its back, and he jumped while shooting electricity at me Zeus style. Now things just got more interesting. Suddenly he was faster, his attacks were much more precise, and he could dodge my attacks now by flying away. It took me a few tries to figure him out, but remember when I told you about his weak point? Apparently if you get way too close to his body, specifically near his legs, he won't be able to attack you, and if he doesn't attack you, he won't be able to transform into Zeus, which was weird. I don't know if I broke the game or confused the shit out of this creature, but he never transformed, so I took that chance to finish him off for good. Even still, the star of this show was this giant man sitting on his throne. This underground section of the game was one in a lifetime experience, and it made me realize how small I actually was compared to the rest of the world. On day 58, I came across this giant turtle in the Church of Vows. He was a gentle giant and he was asking me about the origins of this church, but I had no idea what he was talking about. Okay, so at this point I had realized how strong I actually was. Through my journey in the Leonia of the Lakes, I felt like I was the bully because I shifted the whole paradigm in the land and there was no one to challenge me. But there was one creature that I always wanted to fight ever since I defeated Margaret, the flying dragon Akil. So I traveled back to the land of Limegrave and challenged the Crucible Knight before paying a visit to Our Lady Dragon. The Crucible Knight was a very prideful and confident warrior. You could feel his strength just by him walking towards you. Every impact had a purpose and every move had a destination. He was very angelic with his shining wings and golden sparkles. He was very quick on his feet too. Remember when I told you how strong I had become? Not here though, because I struggled hard, but I wasn't angry or frustrated because I knew how strong I was after defeating the great enemy in the underground, and for this warrior to hold his own against me was very commendable. I admired his confidence and technicality during the fight. Even after defeating him, I still had a lot of respect for the Crucible Knight. Anyways, back to the dragon. Yup, the great enemy fleeted. Honestly, this was embarrassing for the dragon. I had never fought a more pathetic creature before, and they had the audacity to call it a great enemy, more like a pathetic reptile. The Crucible Knight was much more menacing. On day 65, I made my way to the land of Caria Manor, where I met a sensible troll called E.G., who was actually a blacksmith. Would you look at that? I thought all trolls were just angry, senseless creatures. So after talking with him and upgrading my weapons, now it was time to visit the Caria Manor. As I was getting close, I was showered with blue lighting arrows, so I had to quickly get inside the castle. As I entered the gate, I was attacked by a giant hand with 10 fingers. Yes, a freaking giant hand just slapped me. It was the creepiest living thing I had ever came across. So on my second try, I quickly made my way to the stairs and into the castle. From there, I made my way to the top of the castle, where I faced another troll, but this time it was a night troll. Like, how many variants of them are there? Ascending up the stairs again, I came across this round chair conference room, and suddenly the Royal Knight Loretta appeared. At first, I thought this was just another boss fight, but soon I realized that this was actually a great enemy, because the Royal Knight was no different from others. It had a very similar fighting style as the Tree Sentinel, but with magic arrows, and this was my quickest battle ever. At this point, I didn't know what was happening to me. Why am I so strong all of a sudden? I think I overestimated this world and trained harder than I should have, because the only real challenge I faced so far was the Tree Sentinel, Margaret, and the Crucible Knight. But soon I would be challenged like I have never been challenged before, but for now we move. So after defeating the Royal Knight, I made my way to the land of Misty Blue. There I saw a dragon wandering around, and I knew I had to kill it. But during our fight, it just disappeared. So I went to one of the watchtowers, and there I saw Ronnie the Witch again. Apparently there was a quest line that I had to complete, but I never got the chance to do it. But I met her royal soldiers. I saw E.G. again, and apparently he was one of the war counselors. I also met Bladed, and I must say he was one of the coolest characters in the entire game. I also met Sorceress Celavis, and at this point I had to carry on with my journey to find General Radon. And I thought I would never see these characters again, but I was wrong. On day 73, I finally decided to go back to the Limegrave in order to cross the border to the land of Khalid, because at this point I thought I was strong enough to endure the punishment of that land. But oh boy, I was in for a show tonight, son. After reaching the Limegrave, I visited the Table of Lost Grace for a final stats and weapon upgrades. Then I fast traveled straight to the Kalium Ruins, the mainland of Khalid. By this point, I had enough experience in combat and finding my paths. To say this land was living in an entirely different dimension is an understatement. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, this land had lost its sense of organized structure and enemy levels. The land did not respect my presence nor how strong I was. If I was to lose my mind traveling this land, there was no sense of direction or comfort. It seemed like the land was just there to torture me in every corner. It didn't make any sense because every enemy I faced was as strong as they were before, whether it was the giant crow or the dog-looking T-Rex. The music was dreadful and the atmosphere was suffocating, and there were these poisonous mushrooms everywhere. Though I was able to hold my own because of how far I had came in regards to surviving this world. So I traveled from the Kalium Ruins to the Celia town of sorcery. The path was just dreadful, and there wasn't much excitement except for just trying to stay alive. From there I made my way to the Cathedral of Dragon Communion, and I came across this decaying Ixyx dragon. At first it seemed just like any other dragon, but I was wrong. It took me 3 hours to kill this dragon even at level 85, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I learned the dragon's movement and fighting techniques quickly, but there was this one thing that I could not avoid, the Scarlet Root. If you had noticed, I was a close combat fighter. I would get right close to an enemy to kill it, and I didn't have any magic or long distance attacks to help me, and that was my downfall. Once the dragon released its Scarlet Root, there was no way for me to avoid it, but it wasn't just any poison. Once it touched me, I wasn't able to move until the smoke went away. I was dreading this battle, but because of my ego, I couldn't just let it go. So I turned off my screen recording and focused on killing this dragon. And after 3 hours, I was finally able to kill the dragon, but I don't have any footage to show you except for this short clip. From there, I traveled to the Redmond Castle by crossing the bridge, and with the use of this teleportation, I was finally inside the castle. There, I was greeted by these 2 guardian lions. They were horrifying creatures, but I was so numb because of the battle with the dragon that I didn't care, and I jumped right into the ring with them. But to my surprise, they were really stupid. They couldn't stop attacking each other accidentally. quickly. So I took that chance to use one against the other. I did this by bringing them both to a tight corner and stood right in front of them. They would attack simultaneously, and hence one would attack me while the other one would attack his own partner. And this is how I got one of the lions killed, and now I only had to worry about one of them. So after dealing with these creatures, I went to the main gate, and there I was greeted by every single NPC that I saved or I met throughout my journey. As I ran up the stairs towards the eccentric set, he asked if I was ready. The music, the atmosphere, everything. It was truly an out-of-body experience. As the cutscene began, I jumped off my seat because, mind you, by this point I didn't know who I was gonna face. And lo and behold, it was General Radon. And as the set shouted,
"O gathering of champions, the revels begin! The celebration of war!"
I had shivers down my spine, and I was ready to finally face General Radon on day 98 of this long journey. I descended into the Wailing Dunes to fight Star's Courage Radon in this vast land of Red Sea. There were these remains of the old champions everywhere with a glowing light to show their sacrifice during the battle. And General Radon was truly magnificent in size and power. He was everything I was expecting him to be. A true warrior ready to die for what he believed in. As the battle began, General Radon started shooting gravity arrows at me from the distance with a very precise aim that was extremely hard to dodge in time. And as I got close, he started shooting metal arrows from the sky to slow me down. But when we got even closer, I noticed that he was riding a tiny horse. This put me off guard, like how is this tiny horse carrying the weight of this Olympian fighter? Anyways, General Radon was very well trained in using his double curved swords. He was swinging using his magic and his gravity arrows all at the same time to make sure he didn't leave any opening for attacks. In the first few tries, I thought I was all alone, but soon I realized that I could summon all the champions into the battlefield. So the gatherings of the champions, including myself, teamed up in this grandiose battle to defeat this Olympian fighter. And remember when I point out that most enemies would leave an opening once they were occupied with others, but not this one, because he was able to stood his ground against all of us. So I started analyzing his movements, and I noticed that even he would put his guards down once he was overwhelmed by all these other fighters, and that I could inflict damage on him, but I would have to be ready to get hit too. So I marched towards him with my torrent and moved to his back and started attacking him. I couldn't believe my plan was working, but it was also taking a toll on my body because I couldn't attack him and block his attacks simultaneously. And after many tries, as the gatherings of the champions were able to defeat this great enemy of the Wailing Dunes, it was an honor to fight alongside these champions, but it was also a huge honor to battle a warrior of this caliber. After the battle, I talked with Bladed and traveled back to the first site of grace in the Lime Grave where my journey began. I climbed the highest peak of the tallest mountain to take it all in. Everything I went through, all the people I met, and all those enemies that I battled. It was an experience that I would never forget. And if you guys want me to make a part 2, make sure to subscribe to my channel.
Hey!